I work for Unifor, and with Unifor, we are experts in the space of AI and automation for the contact center, and really working across industries to talk through what do you do in that space when you think about all things from the self-service experience to what's happening during a call with an agent, and then after the call, what's occurring as well. How does that then relate to the banking industry and what we're seeing and what we're thinking about when we think about how do we now think about AI and automation? How does that connect into complaint management? And what is that connection to CSAT? It feels like there's a lot of different steps there in terms of what could be followed and where do we kind of go from there. So confirming now, hopefully you can see my screen. I wasn't able to get into anything bigger, but hopefully that's good. Great, I'm seeing head nods. Okay, so in Unifor itself, we've been around for over 14 plus years, working across geographies. And for us, our biggest joy is the customers that we work with, especially across different industries, in particular in the banking industry, looking at it from different angles, whether it's the retail banking side, it's the lending side, it's wealth management. There's so many different interesting and innovative ways to apply what we do within this particular space. And for us, when we think about some key things that we're doing in this space, a big part is recognizing that there's a lot of value in the conversations that are happening. And when we say conversations, we're thinking about any interaction that a company is having with their customers across digital channels, and then being able to capture that in a meaningful way. What we've recognized and why we're really leaning into this message of value is that there is so much that your customers are telling you without you even realizing it. And there's no longer the need, especially when it comes to NPS and CSAT, to only think through the lens of a survey. With surveys, we look at that as there can be survey bias, who are the people who typically respond to surveys, those who have a lot to say. And it's not a true capture of your entire customer base. Whereas when you have someone that's calling in or they're interacting via your chat channels, more than likely, the sentiment that they hold there, the perceptions, is not clouded by the idea of the context of this being a survey. It's the real life scenarios that they're going through. They're speaking usually with no sort of caging in terms of the terms that they're using. You're getting a true understanding of where that customer is at. Are they truly satisfied? Are they frustrated? The idea of being able to then be accessible across not only different channels, but thinking through the different applications that are out there. How do we make sure that we are serving your customer where you want to serve them? Customers want to be served across so many different channels. How are we supporting them there? And then even besides the idea of different channels, how do we ensure that we're not only thinking about the customer side, but we're thinking about the agent? A big part of how do you deliver on having a great experience are the people your customers have to interact with. And one of those top people are the agents. And those agents should no longer be overlooked. We're in this amazing space now, especially with all the innovations coming out with AI. We've already been doing this for quite a few years. Thinking through how do we apply AI to improve the way an agent performs, so that way they can provide a better experience to the customer itself, all connecting those lines. Also thinking through the lens of if we support the agent, there's the knock-on benefits of that having really good impact on the operations of the company. And how do we streamline things to make it that much easier to deliver without having to increase cost? And then, of course, another big piece, and this is, again, falling in line with the agents themselves and how customers are also looking at things, is how do we make it that much easier for customers to self-serve? Time is precious. They're looking at how do I just quickly get things resolved? Possibly, could my bank be more proactive in how they reach out to me? They've been capturing so much data. It's not apparent now, you'll see it as I go through this presentation. From our view, even the banking sector, all the banks that are out there are becoming tech companies in their own right. One of the key value pieces is data, and having access to that data is something that we allow them to tap into with AI and automation to really provide experiences that are improving the customer journey as well as the agent journey. And a big part of that is being proactive, engaging early, making sure that customer feels like they're being fully served so that you can drive really good connection with them. So if we take a step back and think through what's even happening in the retail banking sector, we're going to look at this one in particular. What's happening, the day-to-day banking that we're all familiar with, there's been quite a bit of change within this space. One of those big things is the rise of fintech. This is not a current rise. This is the rise that's been going on for over a decade plus, continues. And it's the reason why a lot of traditional banks are welcoming, embracing technology. It's the recognition of, well, we need to disrupt ourselves before we get completely disrupted. And why do we need to do this? Because our consumers and how they interact with the world is changing. It's not only the idea of demographics and whether they're part of a Gen Z or a boomer personality. It's the idea of anything a consumer touches, they're not only looking through the lens of I'm a banking customer and this is what my banking experience should look like. They're looking at it through the lens of I'm a customer, period. And what are the best experiences I've had across a number of different range of opportunities, whether that's in retail and travel. There's so many different ways that they're interacting. And so their perception of what they expect is changing. And so that is then changing the way that banks are starting to show up and realize that if they don't change, there's going to be a loss of revenue. Their competitors are going to start to gain market share, and it's going to be that much harder for them to stand out. There's only so much that you can do from a services standpoint in terms of the financial products that are being put out there. You need to make sure that you're now putting that within a context that really serves that customer. The decision to be with you and be committed to a particular bank is waning. This idea of generationally banking with the same bank that your parents bank with is being dismantled because of all of this new change, and especially the younger generation embracing it, but again, other generations as well. Another big thing that's been happening in the banking sector is this idea of trust. There's a lot of potentially devious practices. There's just this feeling in general that there's a sense of maybe the bank's not looking out for my best interest. Maybe they're selling me products that I don't actually need. What is the risk? So now not just the bank, but then what's the risk of other devious players within this market? Are they selling me things and it's not actually representative of the bank itself? So there's a number of different issues that are causing customers to sort of pause and wonder, am I safe? Is this the right place for me to bank? Am I getting what I was promised? So this idea of building trust touches on a number of different parameters. Big pieces are on the parameters of risk, on the parameters of the idea of financial security. Is this bank about to do something incorrect with my money or my finances? It's the idea of, are they actually complying with all the different rules that are in place? How do we make sure we build that trust? Because that trust piece is a big factor and reason why consumers are then thinking through, is this where I should be? Maybe I should be considering these new entrants that are coming in. And then another big one is the changing needs. For a consumer, the idea of a bank being a place just where I put my money to save, to potentially just do day-to-day banking in terms of getting my salary or your income from your employer, or possibly some potential investments, that's not enough anymore. The consumer themselves are really looking for a bank to offer guidance, advice, really try to be that support. This is one thing that's happened in the fintech industry. It's not only the technology angle that's been giving them a lot of traction, it's the acknowledgement and recognition of the needs, the individual needs, and being able to cater to that at scale in terms of what does that consumer need to feel supported throughout their entire banking journey. If you think about the life cycle of being a banking customer, it can start when you're very young and the only thing you need is savings. And you go into all the other pieces connected to life, whether that's going into education, and what do you do there to have the funding for that? What do you do when you're going to buy a home? If you're opening a business, if you're thinking through your investment portfolio, if you're thinking about retirement, there's so many life events that occur that now consumers are looking at, how does my bank support me in navigating that piece? How is my bank really allowing me to become financially well, financially literate, and really guiding so that I'm making the best decisions with the money that I have? And so if we think about then, what's the opportunity in leveraging AI? There's a couple of opportunities here that are really exciting. A big one is in differentiation. We mentioned the fact that all banks now are really looking at how do they disrupt themselves. And the reason is because how do you stand out from the pack? How can you leverage AI to make sure that you're offering services, you're packaging together a really good offer to your customer base that seems like you actually care for them, whether it's financial wellness advice, maybe it's proactive services based on their needs. So besides it just being that human to human level interaction that was happening, because of AI, because of this ability to power its self-service experiences, because it can be embedded within applications. A lot of banks have already gone to mobile banking apps. Again, that data that's connected there. What are things that you can do to enrich that experience? The building trust piece. The building trust piece is great, especially if we think about AI and how it can be leveraged within there. That idea of compliance, the idea of continuous tracking, so many pieces that can be supported in building trust and getting accurate information. One of the concerns that comes up quite a few times from consumers, not just unique to banking, is the idea of you can kind of roll the dice and whoever you speak to as an agent, they might give you one answer versus another. You can imagine with AI working in the back end, supporting those agents, they're now making sure they're giving consistent, accurate information to the customer so that customer is well equipped. Operational efficiency being so key. We're in a space now where there's high inflation. We know that we're in a recession. We're thinking through what type of investments we can make. And sometimes it feels like it's this choice between one thing or the other. Yes, I want to create a great customer experience and improve NPS, but the investment in doing something like that might actually hurt our financial stability, or it might take funding away from another project. What's really great with AI is the cost has come down significantly, but also it streamlines the way that you can deliver a lot of great experiences so that you can have that efficiency, you can make that investment, but it doesn't need to cut off other experiences that you're looking at. Another big one that's really starting to ramp up, there was this potential, this perception in the past that the contact center was this necessary evil. It was the fact that customers have questions, they may have concerns, there's certain things they just need to get done. So customer experience, contact centers, this idea of having this service sort of oriented capability was just this necessary cost for the business to run. There's now this recognition of, again, back to banking on the value of conversations, that within that conversation, if you deliver an enhanced experience and you build that trust, there's this heightened ability to now upsell, cross-sell, to grow with that particular customer and use AI to identify those opportunities. When's the best time to actually promote a particular capability, promote a particular service that you have that's available that doesn't feel like a sales pitch anymore. It's really operating like your best salesperson and saying, you know what, this customer has just come into the bank, they've moved in, they're in this new location, and it seems as though they're just setting up for a mortgage. What might be a nice value add-on to it is a nice home equity line of credit. And it doesn't feel salesy, it just feels like a great thing for them to have for their banking experience. And so if we think about this, really what I'm talking through is how AI and automation can really improve and enhance every step along the customer journey, especially in those digital interaction pieces, whether it's that self-serve piece, and how can we make that as easy and as frictionless as possible so that we can get more people on the self-service rate. I talked about sometimes there being that trade-off. The more that you can get your customers to self-serve, and we're seeing this in a number of different spaces, the better you're doing not only for your company from an operational efficiency standpoint, but also for that customer as well. If we think about CSAT and NPS, one of the number one complaints that customers have is being on hold. That's the biggest top frustration for customers across industry, across demographics, is having to wait in order to complete something that feels routine, simple, but it's going to take a lot of time. Now imagine, besides the routine, simple tasks you can think of, if you have the right tools, you can also automate additional steps that might feel complicated. So the more you can increase that and make that a very seamless experience, it makes it fantastic. If there does need to be a transfer, whether it's from a self-service channel or if it's within, you're talking to one agent, you have to speak to another. I'm sure we've all had those experiences where you're speaking to an agent and they're in one particular department of the bank and you have to transfer them to another space. The idea of it being intelligent, the idea of let's have the AI listen in, it's transcribing the call, but not only transcribing, it's summarizing on its own without the need for human interaction, the key reasons why that customer called in. So when the new person picks up the phone, they don't have to ask that customer what's going on, what do they need. Another point of frustration for customers when it comes to trying to get support is having to repeat themselves or having to call back in because the issue wasn't resolved. So this idea of just thinking through every step, improving it. During that time with the agent, how do we make sure that that agent is being responsive? It's listening into the sentiments of the customer. Is that customer frustrated? Does that customer actually need something else, even though they called about something like one thing, but it sounds like they probably need something else? Is there the time and patience, the energy to listen to the full context of the call? If you think about from an agent standpoint and what does their day-to-day look like, there's an expectation that they're churning through calls. They have their own KPIs that they have to meet. The idea of consistently providing an excellent experience on every single call can feel exhaustive and burnout, and there's things that sometimes get missed. Having a little co-pilot, this AI that can sit there and give guidance to an agent, let them know the exact thing to say, or even complete tasks on behalf of that agent makes a great support during that piece. This idea of promise management is really the idea of when the customer calls in, any sort of commitment that was made on that call. Yes, I'm going to credit your account. Yes, we're going to make sure we call you back. Yes, we're going to provide you the promotional offer. Any commitment that was made on the call, it's the idea of how do you ensure that it's actually going to be done? And AI, as well as automation, can support that. I talked about the summary notes. That's what we call after call work automation. It really is take some work away from the agent, streamline it, make it easy, summarize the call very quickly. And then a great piece that we're going to delve into is analytics and how do you make sure that you're taking all the insights from all these different pieces. I talked about survey bias. How do we move away from survey bias, take account of all the different interactions that we have in there, regardless of channel? It can even be across the email channel as well. So it doesn't just have to be chats or text or voice. It could be email, any sort of interaction you can think of. How do we get a full picture of what's happening with our customers and then take that to improve all the different experiences we're having with customers, both digitally, but even in person through the bank, depending on the insights you pull from there. So for us, when we think about transforming the experience, we really think about the idea that you have to start off with understanding. How do you make sure you have access to the right data? How are you streamlining that and consolidating it into one place? Data silos are a typical thing, so no one should feel bad about that. But if you don't have that foundational piece of how do you understand, how do you get your data ready to make sure that you have a clear picture and then be able to process it in an effective way, it makes it that much easier, that much harder to set up an experience where you can truly build a real engagement with that customer, take action on any of the requests that they need, and be able to optimize and go through that loop. So if we then bring that to the point of complaints and think through this idea of AI, it can travel across the entire journey. We can make sure that we have a really good understanding of what's going on. Well, what's the opportunity in complaints? Complaints are probably the top reason you're getting calls. And it's the reason why your call volumes are increasing and your CSATs are dropping. And there's a lot of little patch fixes in terms of what do we do. I have a couple of stats here that I just thought were interesting. One of them was this idea that there's over 1,300 categories of complaints. To me, that's just mind-blowing in terms of all the different ways. Because when you think of a complaint, and I'm not going to spend too much time defining a complaint, but there's so many different areas and ways in which you might complain. We talked about, are they following regulatory compliance? But it could be that they just didn't credit my account. There's so many different pieces in between that in terms of what that complaint is. And if you're not even capturing that at a certain level, it's giving you less of a picture of the things that you could tackle and resolve. I talked about this opportunity to build trust. Well, because we're not doing a good job in managing complaints, there's a huge cost when it comes to the distrust side of things. It's the idea of customers then leaving you as a customer and them thinking, well, I'm going to take my business elsewhere, and in not resolving those complaints. And I thought this one was an interesting stat in terms of declining 12% in profits over a 3-year period for just not being responsive enough to the complaints that were happening in the industry. And then we think about missed opportunities connected with that as well. And it's all that piece again about what are the opportunities if we were analyzing every call. So besides the fact that you've lost customers and you've lost money, you've also lost insights in terms of what are the things that could be changed for the future? What are the learnings that could have come out of that as well? So if we think about what's the current approach and where's their opportunity, the current approach right now is that if there's complaints, a lot of times we're dealing with it after the fact. So we're not dealing with it in real time. There's only this slow movement to the idea of using anything like conversational AI or other tools to actually take a little pulse and get a sense of what's going on and where there's opportunity. But like I mentioned, it's not real time, it's post, it's looking at it and saying, okay, well, we can categorize the different reasons. So the intent, the different reasons people called in. We can look at sort of the different particular categories of, is it particular addresses, et cetera. So we can pull together some cool dashboards that will give us some analytics as to what's going on, what's driving these complaints. Then we bring it into our back office, and then there's some work that's done by analyst teams, et cetera. And then it may trickle back to improving operations on the contact center. It may trickle down to improving the other steps within the organization. But this goes back to that stat of 94% of the time, we're just failing in terms of taking advantage of this opportunity. So if we think about what's an AI-powered approach to complaints management, it says, let's start in real time. AI now enables us to support customers in real time, whether it's self-service or whether it's on the agent side. In real time, it can listen into that call, acknowledge what is the sentiment of that call, what's the tone, what is really going on? Is that customer really irate and upset? Is it based on tone? Is it based on the words that they're using? Based on that, we can take real-time action and think through, okay, what's the best way to de-escalate this type of situation? How do we make sure that we're supporting this customer and trying to resolve it within this call versus it having to be multiple steps and them calling back or having to email? How do we ensure that if it's not going to be resolved in that particular call, that we're taking really good notes so the next step that comes down the road, another agent needs to interact, that customer doesn't have to start over again. And then it's the step of how do we analyze? So the biggest change is how do we do it in real time? And then in addition, think through the analytics that come from that so that if it goes to the back office, all those different steps happen, but then we have a nice cycle loop because those analytics are now going to be connected to a larger business intelligence system, and we're going to build a process. It's never just technology. We're going to build a process to have a feedback loop of how do we constantly improve the way that we are supporting, analyzing, thinking through how to manage through complaints in real time and post analytics so that we can create a really great experience. And so for us at Uniphore, when we look at this and think through how do we have an AI-ready approach, it really is through the lens of 3 solutions that we offer through real-time agent assistance, the technology that's there to really be a co-pilot for the agent. It's through the analytics, the knowledge that you can learn there. And then what can happen, and this is sort of progress over time, is that the knowledge you take from the agent assist side, because that's probably where you're going to start initially. You could start at self-service as well, it doesn't matter, either one. But the knowledge you take from the agent assist side, the analytics that you can get, can actually help you build a really great self-serve experience. And we call it the X platform, where it's the idea of a single platform for all of the different tools that we have so that they easily are in this feedback loop and that they're learning. And so to give you a visual of what that looks like, it really is across channels. Let's capture that data in a very clean, succinct way. Let's pull it through our X platform, a mixture of AI-powered understanding and automation to really process that information so we can do the real-time guidance, that we can take action on what needs to happen. And then the insights that we pull out of that can be powered back in as well. So what I thought would be interesting before we open the panel is just giving you a visual of what I'm discussing here in terms of what it means to offer real-time support when a customer has a complaint. So again, I'm going to, hopefully my computer will work with me here. Let's see here. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing for a second just to make sure that I'm sharing with audio as well. So let's share sound.
In July, I took the bait and applied for your bank's Premier Select card via online banking. The only reason I applied was because of the 1% interest for 6 months offer. I was doing this to save on interest, but I got my bill as a large interest charge. This is deceptive, and I didn't sign up for this. I want this sorted out immediately.
Our promotional period is 1% interest only if you keep an unpaid balance below $1,000. Otherwise, you will be charged a retroactive interest payment. I see you had a $1,050 balance still on that card, which is why you were charged the full interest. This by text or by email.
I'm going to jump ahead. So that first part was just showing, the customer calls in, they're frustrated, they're upset. Even for an agent to have to take a call where a customer is really upset can be a little jarring. Having a system and a tool right now, this is showing our agent assist solution, where it's giving that guidance of how to navigate this customer. What are the different things that we can do to explain why this particular concern is actually occurring is helpful and allows that agent to provide a really great experience. I'm skipping ahead to the piece then where the agent actually looking at the different information being prompted by the agent assist tool that we have is actually able to then make an offer. So instead of it having to escalate to a manager, put that customer on hold, get to a point of frustration, because of certain business rules that this particular company asked for, the agent's empowered to actually try to resolve the call or resolve the complaint in real time.
Can you send it by text?
Sure. Can you confirm your current phone number?
123-456-7890.
Thanks. I've just sent you the text. Is there anything else I can help you with?
No, that's it. I see the link and updated bill with the credit and promo extension.
So immediately you can see there's that change in tone. The customer seems a lot happier, calm. The issue itself has been resolved, and the agent can now move on to resolving the particular call. And then the positive here in terms of that call happening, having that real-time guidance is then even after the fact, in terms of what's happening on our end in the tool, it's automatically updating the CRM or CCAS application that the agent's using so that they don't really have to type anything. It's listening to the call, it's capturing the notes. If there's an action in updating a particular credit, it just clicks yes or no, and then the system will automatically connect with the appropriate backend applications to apply that credit or send an email to the appropriate team internally to make sure that credit happens. And then the last thing, because it was listening to the call, it's automatically giving a nice summary of what the call was about, what were the type of intents in terms of why that customer called in, and if there were any promises that were made. So all of this is captured on the agent's behalf. They can now actually move on to the next call that's in the queue without, again, having to either put that customer on hold or having to take themselves off the queue, finish a note, and then move on to another customer. The last thing that I'll show, because I talked about analytics usually being the first stop, is then the positive is after going through that interaction, you got a lot of really good information, is that you can then have a dashboard at the end. This dashboard can be used for a number of different audiences. It could be used from the supervisor manager standpoint if they're looking at just the agent's performance itself. It could be used by leaders more senior in the business who just want to get a good sense of what is happening when it gets to complaints. How are we managing them? What are the reasons for these complaints? And you can create a dashboard, again, cater to the needs that you need for your business to get a good picture of what's happening. Or you can take the data completely out of here, put it into a BI system. So that way it's not only through the lens of how do we improve the contact center, but how do we improve our business to ensure a great CSAT, great sort of NPS scores across every touch point, because the learnings that you'll get in those calls or in those texts probably apply to the other experiences that you have in that company as well. So with that, I appreciate your patience with the joy of technology. This is what we balance through at certain times.